The Prime Minister engulfed in an explosive row with his former chief advisor. Dominic Cummings turns his fire on Boris Johnson, accusing him of lacking competency and integrity, values he says the country deserves. This is a developing story this evening. We'll have the latest with our political editor, Robert Peston, also on the programme. Justice for the Postmasters, who spent years trying to clear their names, falsely accused of stealing money. Dozens lost their jobs and homes. Today, their convictions finally quashed. Positive news on the impact of the vaccines on COVID infection rates. Wales manager Ryan Giggs charged with assaulting 2 women. And Sir Eltons throwing his usual Oscars after party, but this time we're all invited.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. The bitter row between the Prime Minister and his former key advisor, Dominic Cummings, has erupted into an extraordinary public spat tonight. Mr Cummings accused Boris Johnson of trying to stop a leak inquiry because it allegedly affected one of the Prime Minister's allies. He also openly questioned the competence of Mr Johnson. It came after speculation that Mr Cummings was the source of leaked text messages between the Prime Minister and Sir James Dyson. Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Robert Peston. So, Robert, what exactly is Mr Cummings alleging here?
So the first thing to say, this is a full-scale political crisis for the Prime Minister because Dominic Cummings was, for the first period of his premiership, the most powerful official who knew more than anybody else how the Prime Minister governed. Now, he's reacted furiously to briefings, he says, by Jack Doyle, the Director of Communications at Downing Street, that went to the newspapers last night, alleging that he, Mr Cummings, was the source of a series of leaks, including the one you've referred to, which is of text messages, which seemed to show that the Prime Minister had too chummy a relationship with a very senior businessman who was saying he was going to help with ventilators. But the other claims that Cummings makes, again, angrily reacting to suggestions from Downing Street that he was responsible for leaks in these areas. So he, as you may remember, that back in November there was a leak of the lockdown that was coming. There was a search, an official search for the so-called chatty rat. He says Downing Street have accused him of being the chatty rat. He says he can prove that it wasn't him, that it was an official called Henry Newman. He says the Prime Minister refused to punish Henry Newman because Henry Newman is too close to his fiancée, Carrie Symonds. And then I think the most devastating claims of all by Dominic Cummings, so far I may say, is relating to the fact that the Prime Minister, he says, was seeking to get help from party donors to redecorate his Downing Street flat, which Dominic Cummings says was wholly unethical, and he told the Prime Minister it was unethical.
And, Robert, you say a full-scale political crisis, but just how serious is this for the Prime Minister?
Oh, I can't think of actually... I can hardly think of anything quite as serious as this for a Prime Minister. Somebody who has been so close to him, saying that he governs, as I say, in an unethical way, and more, I think, worryingly for the Prime Minister. The thing that Dominic Cummings, he hasn't spoken about today, is most concerned about is he thinks the Prime Minister made a series of mistaken decisions about how to deal with COVID. He believes those decisions by the Prime Minister cost lives, and he wants to talk about that on oath, which is the last thing the Prime Minister would want. So, yes, we are on the brink, I think, of weeks of damaging destabilisation of this Prime Minister.
All right, Robert, we'll be watching how this all unfolds. Thank you. Next tonight, dozens of postmasters who were wrongly convicted of fraud and theft finally had their names cleared by the Court of Appeal today. The shameful and long-running miscarriage of justice saw them prosecuted and in some cases jailed after a faulty computer system incorrectly showed money had gone missing. Well, many of the victims lost their businesses, their homes and their marriages. 3 died before they could be fully exonerated. A judge said the Post Office knew there were problems with the accounting system but steamrolled over anyone who questioned it. Now there are demands for a public inquiry. So Jill Carrier reports.
They had gone into court this morning as convicted criminals. They emerged as innocents. There was joy, relief, anger, and many tears at having their convictions quashed in one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in English legal history. Can you explain how it's affected you?
My family's life, my my health, losing my work, losing my home, my self-worth. It's been terrible.
You can't make up for this 14 years of hell, which I've suffered, my family, my wife, my children, everyone has suffered.
I don't know how I'm going to feel because, you know, from last 10 years we've been treated as convicted criminals, so it's going to be a different life now.
The Post Office today issued an unreserved apology. But for 14 years, it prosecuted hundreds of sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses for stealing money, accusing them of fraud on the basis of a computer system it knew was defective and was wrongly reporting cash shortfalls. Tom Hedges received a 7-month suspended sentence for theft and false accounting.
We lost everything. We were forced to live on benefits for 5 years. Nobody will employ a man in his late 50s, early 60s with a criminal record. You can't even get a job stacking supermarket shelves.
Many lives were ruined. They lost their homes, their livelihoods, and in some cases their liberty. Noel Thomas was accused of stealing £48,000 and he was jailed.
I wouldn't like to see them go to jail. Hit them in their pockets. Make them feel like I felt when I lost everything.
Somebody knew everything that was going on, somebody needs to be able to account.
There are now calls for a public inquiry into the scandal, but tonight it is about celebrating justice. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
India's desperate struggle with coronavirus has broken yet another grim record. Today it reported more than 330,000 new infections, the highest ever for the second day in a row. Hospitals are overwhelmed with the sick and dying. There's not enough beds for patients and oxygen is running short. And a warning that this report from Paul Davies contains some upsetting pictures.
In today's India, you don't measure the crisis by the number of patients in the COVID wards, but by the number of critically ill lying outside unattended. Here, desperate relatives plead for medical help, but are told there is none. All beds and, crucially, all oxygen is being used. Not allowed in for treatment. Many are dying in hospital car parks.
Very horrific. I have never seen this type of situation in my whole medical career. Means I am from last 10 years, I am practicing medicine. I have not seen this type of situation where people are dying on the roads. They are not able to get bed, they are not able to get oxygen.
The shortage of oxygen has been declared a national crisis. In Delhi, tankers carrying it are now given a police escort. Oxygen is the new gold and a target for criminals before it can reach the struggling hospitals. This Indian MP, Sara Bharadwaj, posted a grim message on Twitter saying the hospital where he's being treated will run out of oxygen in 3 hours. Without it, he says, he feels like he's drowning. India reported a world record of new cases in the last 24 hours, among them 65-year-old Kamala Devi, arriving in an auto rickshaw at NMCH hospital in Patna with her son after being turned away by other establishments.
NMCH में यहाँ बोले कि ऑक्सीजन की कमी है, ऑक्सीजन नहीं मिल रहा है, यहाँ भी कोई सुनने वाला नहीं है, हम लोग काफी परेशान हैं, पेशेंट को लेकर इधर-उधर भटक रहे हैं.
Even if Kamala is given a bed here, she'll be taking her chances in a hospital that's struggling, according to the daughter of a patient admitted overnight. And still the sick arrive. Even when there are no beds, the healthcare system is buckling, and tomorrow looks like being even worse than today. Paul Davies, ITV News.
Well, that is quite a contrast with the picture here, where the success of the mass vaccination programme was given another major boost today. A study found that just a single dose of either AstraZeneca or the Pfizer vaccine reduces infections by nearly 2/3. It also protects older, more vulnerable people as much as the young and healthy. But scientists are still urging caution. Here's our science editor, Tom Clark.
In Luton this morning, they were queuing for the mobile vaccination clinic. Next stop, immunity from COVID.
I'm not a fan of needles, so I was a little apprehensive, but it was fine in the end.
But I'm happy and relieved.
Good, fine, easy. Research published today brings an early hint of the news scientists had barely dared to dream. Not only did jabs prevent severe illness and death, they stop most people getting infected in the first place. The studies showed that both the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines cut infections by 65% after one dose, and either jab produced a strong antibody response in 95% of people. But the other 5% had a low response, and the study authors are keen to see how they respond to the second jab.
Vaccination is great. We need to get the levels down. Vaccination's, a good way to do that. But people still need to be aware that they can get it again, they can pass it on, and we are essentially walking a tightrope. We're trying to get it to too low levels to avoid getting new variants, which then get rid of all the gains we've made.
It's one of the reasons why the government is sticking doggedly to its path out of lockdown.
There's no question that things are better than they were. There's no question that we're starting to get the pandemic really well under control at the moment. But we've got to stick to our cautious approach and go through the steps of the roadmap.
One concern is once limited indoor mixing starts being allowed in May, how closely people will stick to the rules. Signs so far is that most are doing as asked despite new freedoms.
So I think we need patience. The end is in sight. It's weeks away. We can see it. We just need that patience to make sure we have the vaccination program roll out, we collect the data, and we know that at each point as we unlock that actually it's safe to do so without triggering an uptick in infections.
Senior government scientists are confident cases will continue to fall throughout May. Summer isn't saved yet, but things are certainly heading in the right direction. Tom Clark, ITV News.
Still to come. On the trail of rioters who stormed Congress, a special report on America's enemy within. And Elton's not-so-exclusive Oscars bash. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The US Justice Department says it expects to arrest more people over the riot and storming of Washington's Capitol building in January. Well, our correspondent Robert Moore and his team were the only TV news crew to enter the building with the mob. And in a special report, he looks at who the rioters were and whether America can defeat the enemy within.
USA! USA! The investigation into the Capitol Hill insurrection is still accelerating. 400 people have been arrested so far. Are you ready? And another 100 may be charged in the coming days. As we saw at the time, the mob contained an extraordinary array of individuals and causes, ranging from the wild to the deeply menacing.
Where are the traitors? Drag them out by the hair!
Among them was an infuriated David Medina, who we encountered outside of Nancy Pelosi's office.
We were normal, good, law-abiding citizens, and you guys did this to us!
We travelled 2,500 miles and tracked him down to Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. He blames the media for creating the storm.
The fact that the media is trying to spin this like this was some big insurrection is just completely false. People were not there for violence. They were there to show the world that we still believe in freedom and we believe in Trump.
His home has been raided, although he has not yet been arrested.
So I'm just going to show you guys, they went through everything. They took my phone, my laptop. I walk into a Capitol building and I get my house raided and guns pointed towards my daughter. There's something wrong with that.
On January the 6th, we filmed him smashing what appeared to be Nancy Pelosi's nameplate, though he denies starting that incident.
Did you or did you not tear down the Nancy Pelosi nameplate?
I did not tear down the Nancy Pelosi nameplate. When I arrived, The Nancy Pelosi nameplate was already torn down and it was in pieces. And that's all I'm going to say.
There were extremists in these hallways beyond a doubt.
Hey, where are they counting the votes?
It is all hands on deck, 24/7, every single FBI field office throughout the United States. This is a massive effort, not only to apprehend those who pulled off January 6th, but also those who might intend to do the next act of domestic terrorism.
Across America, police are constantly pursuing far-right threats. I was taken on a police surveillance flight over the swamps of eastern Florida to glimpse a suspected extremist camp.
It is a striking fact that in this county in Florida, like in other parts of rural America, suspected political extremists are living here entirely off the grid.
The local sheriff is deeply alarmed.
We know for a fact that we have extremist groups here in Volusia County that are training not far from where I'm sitting right now. Their agenda is not peace and goodwill toward men.
It is a daunting task for law enforcement, not only investigating what happened at the Capitol, but trying to anticipate and to stop the next attack.
We've been taken, we've lost one.
Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Well, you can see Robert's full investigation on Sunday evening at 10:25. Wales manager Ryan Giggs will not take charge of his team during this summer's Euros after being charged with assaulting 2 women. The ex-Manchester United star is due to appear in court next week. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn is in Cardiff tonight. Rupert, the Welsh Football Association acting quickly then?
I think, as you would expect, Ryan Giggs had already been on a leave of absence while the investigation was ongoing. Robert Page had taken the helm of Wales and will continue to do so into the Euros, while Giggs will now focus on proving his innocence. He has been charged with 2 counts of assault, one on a woman aged in her 30s, another on a woman in her 20s. The allegations follow an incident at a home in Salford in November last year. Giggs is also charged with a coercive and controlling behaviour. He has said in a statement today that he has full respect for the due process of law and understands the seriousness of the allegations that he faces. He has gone on to wish his Wales teammates well and every success in the Euros this summer, and he has said that he looks forward to clearing his name and that he intends to plead not guilty to all the charges in court. This investigation, of course, will be intensely public and will begin at Salford and Manchester Magistrates Court next Wednesday.
Rupert, thank you. And finally, it's the Oscars this weekend, and the date's not the only thing forced to change by the pandemic. But Sir Elton John is determined it won't stop his Oscars party going ahead. It raises millions for his AIDS Foundation, and this year he's putting it on TikTok with 400,000 people invited. Well, Sir Elton's partner, David Furnish, told ITV News about their plans. Sangeeta Lal reports.
Bored with lockdown?
For the first time ever, everyone is invited.
The video that invited the world to one of the most exclusive parties in Hollywood. Usually given to the biggest stars in the business, but now fans can get their own taste of fame at Elton John's virtual Oscars viewing party.
It's all the bells and whistles. And then Elton and I will be here in the UK. And we will be, live stream hosting from here. And then Elton and I will also, for the higher ticket, we have a higher ticket price event. Elton and I will be virtually visiting people's tables on the night and thanking them for their support.
Sir Elton, who won an Oscar at last year's awards, is selling 400,000 tickets. Fans will be able to watch him perform with some of the biggest stars in music, including Grammy Award winner Dua Lipa, all to raise money for his charity.
We'd really love to raise somewhere in the region of between 2 and 3 million. I would be thrilled. This is the first time that we can actually make it affordable.
Preparations are well underway for the main event, the Oscars. Tickets to watch it with Sir Elton cost $14.99. But even though many may be joining from their sofas, this is still a red carpet occasion.
Is there a dress code? A sequins
compulsory?
There's always a dress code. Dress up. It's been a tough year. We need to enjoy ourselves and let our hair down and have some fun.
After a year of cancelled concerts and delayed events, finally, a night to remember. Sangeeta Lau, ITV News.
Bells, whistles, sequins, the works. That is it for now. Tom will be here with the news at 10:30. Until then, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.